Welcome to the Real News Network in Baltimore. I'm Kim Brown. On Monday, Israel Apartheid Week began on university campuses across Europe, North America, and Africa. What is it? It's an annual informal week of information organized by pro-Palestinian activists about illegal Israel policies towards Palestinians. The first Israel Apartheid Week was held in Toronto in 2005 and has been held every year since then in an increasing number of cities. This year, it is marked with two milestone dates: 50 years of Israeli military occupation in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and the Syrian Golan Heights, and 100 years since the Balfour Declaration, in which the British Empire promised, quote, a national home for Jews in Palestine. We've covered Israel Apartheid Week here before on The Real News, and let's have a look at that.
Demonstrations, banner drops, flash mobs, workshops, as well as the annual Israeli Apartheid Week are different forms of actions organized by DS activists to raise awareness about Israel's apartheid policies towards the Palestinians and to build boycott, divestment and sanctions BDS campaigns as part of a growing global BDS movement. Israeli Apartheid Week's rapid expansion, alongside that of the BDS movement, has arguably established the two as the most prominent global projects by Palestinian activists and their supporters.
Joining us to discuss 2017's Israel Apartheid Week, we're joined with Yara Hawari. She is a Palestinian PhD candidate and lecturing assistant at Exeter University. She writes for the independent Electronic Intifada and is a policy member at the Shabaka think tank. She is involved in the UK BDS campaign and local Palestinian organizations. She joins us today from Washington, D.C. Yara, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Yara, what kind of activities can we expect to see for this year's Israel Apartheid Week, and what has already started for this year's activities?
Okay, so Israeli Apartheid Week actually took place last week in the UK across campuses, and there were lots of different events such as lectures, panel discussions, conferences, and then of course more creative stuff such as mock checkpoints, poetry nights, that kind of thing. And basically it's a week to educate people about the situation in Palestine, to organise and to build support for the BDS campaign. And the people that are involved in it are not just students. We also have academics, faculty members involved, and also the local communities often get involved as well.
So I want to ask you about the name of the event. I mean, it could have been called Israel Occupation Week or Israel Racism Week. So why the focus on apartheid?
Okay, well, as you already mentioned, Israel Apartheid Week was born out of Toronto in 2005. The activists there decided to call it Apartheid Week so that it would accurately portray the situation on the ground in Palestine. The apartheid regime in South Africa is well known across the world. So not only is the term accurate for Palestine, but it also helps people make that link in comparison with South African apartheid. And actually, loads of South African organizations endorse Israeli Apartheid Week. I think it's something like over 85 organizations and trade unions support us. We all know that Nelson Mandela said that the liberation of the black South African people is not complete without the liberation of Palestine. And similarly, also Desmond Tutu has also frequently said that Israel is an apartheid regime. So there's a lot of links to be made there, but importantly, it accurately represents the situation on the ground.
Do you think that the situation in Palestine could be described in something different than apartheid, or even something even further than apartheid? I mean, are we witnessing a sort of political and actual genocide of the Palestinian people?
I would say that apartheid is a very accurate way to describe what's happening there. Apartheid means separate, right? It's an institutionalized form of separateness. And what Israel has done since 1948 is enforce this separateness in order to maintain the Jewish-Israeli domination over the Palestinian people. And how it does this is like through a load of different laws and regimes of control. Freedom of movement is heavily restricted. There's different legal systems for Palestinians. So I think apartheid is a very accurate way to describe what's going on the ground. And of course, apartheid falls under the umbrella of settler colonialism, which many of us are using to frame Israel and Palestine, Israel as a settler colonial project, and the way that it maintains that is through a system of apartheid. So I think it's a very fair term to use.
So, what kind of efforts, if any, have been made to silence Israel Apartheid Week? And if so, who has been trying to quell this event?
So actually, in the UK, we've seen quite a lot of attempts to silence us. The university institution and administrations have actually stopped events from going ahead. We also received leak letters that came from ministers in the government that said that directed the universities to crack down on these events. So we did see a lot of opposition coming up from the higher level down. But, you know, despite that, our activities went ahead on over 30 campuses. There were lectures, there were different talks and panels, there were mock checkpoints. And yeah, I mean, in the face of attempts to silence us, we still managed to do everything that we wanted to do.
Well, and Yara, finally, I think that it's pretty clear why the 50 years of military occupation is a milestone date, because this year is also marked, however, with the title 100 Years of Settler-Colonialism. So what is meant by that, and what has happened over this past 100 years that is considered the start of settler colonialism in Palestine?
Yeah, so obviously the 100 years of settler colonialism is referring to the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, which you've already mentioned. The start of Zionist settler colonialism in Palestine didn't begin with that date. It's used as sort of a marker. Settler colonialism in Palestine began a lot before then. But we're using the Balfour Declaration because it was a catalyst for the settler colonial project and the final colonization of Palestine. And the reason we use settler colonialism is because it's very accurate in describing it and making a distinction between regular colonialism. So settler colonialism as a framework, it explains how the settler colonist goes to another place to remove the indigenous people rather than exploit them. And that's what we have seen in Palestine. And that's what we saw in the United States, in Canada, in New Zealand, in Australia. So all of these places are settler colonial projects, and Israel is no different from that. And then apartheid fits into that very well because it's one of the methods that is used to control, contain, and eventually eliminate the indigenous people.
Indeed, we've been speaking with Yara Hawari. She is a Palestinian PhD candidate, also a lecturing assistant at Exeter University. She writes for the Independent Electronic Intifada, also a policy member at the Shabaka think tank. We've been discussing Israel Apartheid Week. As she mentioned, it was in the UK last week, but it is across North America, Europe, and Africa. So check a local university campus near you. Yara, we appreciate you joining us to discuss this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for watching the Real News Network.